gonna make the bottle, and the first thing you wanna do is have about 3 or 4 pounds of clay, because I never have enough clay to like neck it in and make the bottle neck part, so it might be helpful to have a little bit more clay just so that you'll have enough for the neck. So we're gonna start with just centering, which you'll probably want it about twice as high as it is wide, so twice, 2 to 1. It's a little bit narrow. Because we're gonna make it more like a cylinder, and then when we get to the neck part, we're gonna end up throwing it in and up, and necking and throwing in and up, which I'll get to. So I'm gonna start by quickly putting my thumb in the center. You'll want to leave enough room to put your foot in again. So you're gonna measure. This is my 1/2 inch finger, and I perfectly got a 1/2 inch there. And then widen it so you can get your fingers in. So there's 2 types of bottles you can do. One is just flat, and the other one is curved in the bottom. The flat one's just like a cylinder, the way that you would open. The curved one is more like a bowl. So I have a different way of throwing a bowl than you guys do, and I was even challenged with thinking, should I demo a bowl first? And then I was thinking, well, maybe I'll just explain how you do the bowl, right? And then you'll kind of get maybe what's going on here. So the bowl, the only difference is a bowl is slightly rounded at the bottom. It's not like 100% flat. A cylinder, right, is 100% flat. But a bowl is only as round as the bottom is when you start, and then you throw the rest of it like a cylinder. So that's how we're gonna start with this, and that's how you would make something like his huge vase over there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull out and a little tiny bit up. So if you wanna come closer and see what the inside looks like, it's just slightly curved. So come look at the inside here. I'm gonna turn it off. So you can see there's kind of a roundness to it, but it's mostly flat. It's not like super like round. Now you can throw it super round if you want the bottom to be very like V-like shaped. Like any of those vases up there are more like egg shaped, so they're gonna have more of like a rounded body or bottom. So it just depends on what you want. Mine's gonna be very round and have a small neck. So I want my base, my bottom, to be slightly round because it's a cutoff of that circle on the bottom. It's like a, what do you want to call that? Like a cross section of a circular form. So that's the bottom. Then I'm gonna raise these walls up straight. So I'm bringing my hand up to the top of the curve on the inside of the wall. So it's going up, then I'm making that divot. Remember the divots? Then I put a divot on the outside. And these are the basic steps to making a bowl, but we will translate them to making the vase. So I bring the outside hand up until it's right below the inside hand, so that there's just that small gap. So without the sponge, I start at the bottom, I bring it up until there's that much space, and then I bring them up together. So now I'm just gonna bring it up. And I'm gonna keep doing that. So I make the divot a little bit higher on the inside. If you guys wanna come see what I'm doing here. So I'm tracking with my fingers over to the side, and then I'm pushing at the top, the divot at the top of the curve right up there. Not straight across, because if I go straight across, it'll be flat again, right? And then I bring the outside up a little until they meet. Not meet, but slightly below on the outside, just like a cylinder, and then I bring it all up together. And I just keep doing that. So the one thing that people do wrong is they get clay that keeps coming out here and it gets wider and wider, and then they lose a ton of clay, which is kind of what's gonna happen here. But as much as possible, try and keep this volcano-y material inside your cylinder. So you're gonna pull from the outside with your sponge and push it into the cylinder on the outside, and then just bring your hands up like normal. And that should get it back into the clay. If not, you might just have to scrape it off. I have an air bubble at the top, which is why it's wobbly. So every time you bring the wall up, you're gonna reshape the bottom as long as you can still get your hand in there. And bring your hand up to the corner of the wall, and then on the outside pull it up first, and then the space, and then bring it all the way up. I almost feel like I should cut this in half so you can see what I'm talking about, but then I'll have to watch it again. Alright, so this is looking pretty good. So the thing I'm concerned about the most right now is making my wall thin enough and my shaping. So I want my wall about 1/4 inch thick just for drying purposes and firing purposes. And then I'm just taking out some of the wobbles. You can put your fingers parallel like this, and the knuckles will sometimes gather clay where it's too thick and push it down into thinner areas if you go slow enough. My air bubble is really not helping right now. And if you're trying to correct a wobble, it's better to actually slow down, because when you go too fast, it actually, the centrifugal force pushes the wobble out worse each time. So I was going too fast. And I think I'm gonna have to trim this, because I don't know why sometimes when I throw I get this notch here. And now it's like very thin and I can never get it back on, so it's gone. Bye. Alright. So the last thing I do before I start to pull in is thin it, and I know I'm repeating myself over and over again, but it's because of the video and I'm gonna cut it a lot. Alright, so I'm going to insert this and see how thin it is at the top of that curve, because that's what I care about, because I can trim the rest of this. I mean, I could probably pull more. Let's see how thick it is down here. It's pretty thick, so I can take a little more. So I'm just gonna push again and bring it up, and then with the inside hand pull up, and I just totally made a huge wobble in my wall, which is okay. When you're throwing with a lot of clay, you always use less pressure at the top. You use more pressure at the bottom because gravity is pushing this part of the vessel down. So about halfway through, you're going to use less pressure when you're actually like doing the, you know, space and pulling up. So I'm going to start necking it in a little just to keep it as wide as my hand. I don't want it to get ballooned out, because we aren't making a bowl. But that would be the end of making a bowl, and then I would start shaping it into a bowl. But today is a vase, I mean a bottle. So I'm just gonna go in and start shaping. So at the bottom, I'm pushing out at the very bottom and pulling up. And it's very gentle, it's not like very intense. Two things people have trouble with when they're shaping. The first thing that they'll have trouble with is that they're either perpendicular to the wall, and so their shaping thing will chatter and it will go so they need to move it so that it goes with the spin, not against or on top of the spin. Does that make sense? And the second thing people have trouble with is that they don't connect their hand to their body, and they'll just be like shaping like this. And so their hand moves with their vessel instead of anchoring and being able to shape. The way that I shape is I'll put my left hand on the rim with my thumb, and then with my fingers I just touch the back of my right hand. And then as it spins, I just push out gently. I start usually from the top and go down to the bottom. Because it's kind of like the opposite way of how you throw. You usually throw from the bottom up. So this is taking away some of the kind of twists and things as you've been throwing. It kind of compresses it better because it's going in an opposite direction. And then you can recompress the clay by pushing from the inside and pulling up on the outside to reinforce the shape that you want, which is what I'm doing right now. And then you can come back down. The one thing you want to do before you close is measure and just make sure that you know what the measurement is. So what I like to do is I'll measure it and then I'll write how much over like a 1/4 inch it is in 16ths. So this is like 5/16 inch thick. So I'm gonna write a 1 there because it's 1/16 that I need to trim off later. And then I'll measure down here. It gets kind of hard at the bottom because, you know, you don't have as much room to go in the curve up. But that one, gee whiz, I have about 4/16 to take off. And that should be enough measuring for me to know how much I'll need to take off overall. And then at the bottom, in case you messed up, just check it one more time. Yeah, that got a lot thicker, so so I'll have to take off another 2/16. So I'll have to remember that. I'll write it down here because I'll forget otherwise. 2. All right. So now what we're going to do is create the bottle top, which is a little bit difficult only because if you go too wide, it starts to scallop when you neck it in. So you need to keep making sure that it's only as wide as your hand. It never gets wider than your hand, or you'll have a lot of scalloping, which is annoying. Do you guys know what I mean by scalloping? It'll like bunch up and go all the way around. Now you know what I mean? Okay, everyone? Okay. So the first thing I do is neck it in. The second thing I do is compress by throwing it straight up with my fingers. And my fingers are actually parallel, so I'm not actually I'm not bringing any material up. I'm just compressing because they're straight across from themselves. Like my outside is straight across from my inside. And then I neck it in again. Shoot, I see a problem in the bottom I want to fix real fast. Sorry. Which means I'll have to neck it in again. I had like a belly button sticking up. I messed it up more. Okay, that looks good. All right. So neck it in. Compress. Neck it in. Compress. So what's happening now is this wall is getting thicker because all I'm doing is necking and compressing. So now I have to do a pass where I'm actually throwing it, and the only way for you to know if that's happening is by feeling the thickness. So I'm like throwing it like normal where I have my outer hand lower than my inner hand. And if you really like want to make sure that this shoulder is doing well, you're going to compress the shoulder. Just hold the inside with your inside hand. You're going to just kind of hold your hand under, and this is like the shoulder of the piece. And then you're going to kind of run your finger up the clay. So, and that's just compressing it to make sure it can hold the weight of the neck part. So then I'm gonna neck in again, and then compress. It's more about like what you feel you need to do rather than a system of actually doing specific steps. So right now it feels like I just need to neck it in again and compress it again. If it starts feeling thick, then I'll need to do another throwing where I bring it up. And I feel like I need to compress this more on the shoulder. So then I'm going to neck in again, compress. One thing I always do wrong on my necks is I bring my hands up too fast. I just need to slow down because I'm like, oh, it's a smaller part. And then I get this twist that goes all the way up, which can look really cool. But when you don't mean that to happen and it happens, it's annoying. So I'm gonna neck it in again. And this time, because it's feeling thick again, I'm going to throw it instead of compressing it. So I'm pushing down on this area right here, and I'm pushing out with my finger on this area here. So I'm showing you guys because you're on that side. But I'm gonna push down on this shoulder and pull up. And that's gonna make this taller and thinner. Okay. And then I'm gonna compress. Or neck in, sorry, and then compress. And now with the compression, I leave my finger in and I just run the finger all the way up from the bottom to the top. So just so you guys can see, I'm basically just pushing slowly into the finger all the way up. And I'm gonna neck it in. This is getting really narrow, people. If you have a really thin needle tool, it helps for this. I hope this doesn't fall in my neck, my bottleneck. That would be terrible. Alright. And then I'm just gonna trim this because it's a little off center. Alright. A little more. There we go. So you can actually keep necking this until it's closed, but we wouldn't want to do that. You can also use your pinky finger, because your pinky finger is your smallest finger. And I'm actually throwing now. See that little bulge that's coming? That's my pinky finger sticking out, and my other finger is below it pulling up. This is how you can make really, really tiny things like little teapots and teacups on the wheel. Like tiny, I'm talking minute, like very small. Now I'm just compressing. So I leave my hand in there and I just push and compress the clay. I got a twist because I went too fast earlier. Just like this. Alright. Your neck doesn't have to be this narrow. I did that just so you could see that it can be done, or how to do it, because I know some people love it. But I like my necks bigger than this, so because I like corks. So I'm just gonna make it bigger again. It's still too narrow. So all I'm doing on the inside, if you do go too small, is I'm bending my finger like this, and the clay is on both sides, and I'm just pulling it out like this. So you can actually do a lot with throwing if you mess up, or you change your mind. And then if you want, you can just do one last shaping. Metal ribs work really well for this, and they smooth it out really nice. I don't know if we have a metal rib. Mm-hmm. Do we?
Yeah.
Can you give me one quick? Someone? Anyone? Thanks, Sarah. Oh, never mind. I'm stealing yours. You can bring it though. Thanks, Sarah. So you're just gonna run it along the side and slowly pull up. I'm not gonna judge you if you don't want to do this, Cheers. You can leave your fingerprints or whatever you want. It's more about the bottle itself. I just want a 1.5 inch neck, if at all possible, and then whatever size inside you want is fine with me.